Welcome everybody. This is the second of our shared learning. When I say our, it's the Forth Valley and Lomond leader group. This follows from requests from projects last year about a desire to learn about some of the project activities that are going on in our area. And this particular project was our Smart Digital Villages, was generating a lot of interest. Hence the selection of this topic for presentation to you. There are three projects that are going to be, or three and a bit actually, projects that are going to be presented to you. I'm not going to say very much about the projects because I'm going to hand over in a minute to Sean. So Sean Marley has been coordinating these projects on behalf of the leader group and also Stirling Council, and very closely with the Loch Lomond Trossachs National Park, I do believe. So it is very much a partnership project, which was overseen by the leader group. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Hopefully, hang on, we've got a few more people in the waiting room. Can I ask everybody to stay on mute whilst the presentations are taking place? We are recording the session. So if you don't want to appear on the, well, you can turn your camera off, obviously you won't be seen anyway, and you will get an option to agree to the recording or not. This is just because we have had quite a few communities ask if they could see the, you couldn't make it tonight, but really wanted to hear the presentations. So, so in terms of questions, so we're going to have the three presentations. So we've got Jim Mills and Amy McCarran from Thornhill talking about the air quality project that's underway, and not just in Thornhill, wider. We've got Alistair Retty from North talking about the car parking project and the flood monitoring project. And then we have Ian McNeil from Whereverly talking about a visitor management project. If just to keep things moving, because we've got quite a lot to get through in our hour, if we can if we can ask the questions after all three presenters have presented. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, can you just jot them down, or comments, observations, your own experience, just put them into the chat, and we'll come back to them when all three presenters have finished. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Sean. So I'll let you, Sean, tell you a little bit more about the Smart Village project more generally, and then handing over to the presenters. Thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, thanks very much, Anne Michelle. And Anne Michelle's kind of covered that the idea very well there. I think I first came in on from the leaders looking at rural broadband, which then winding up to looking at connectivity in general, and still quite a bit of work to get done. But one thing that we were finding was, how could this increase connectivity that's going around the Forth Valley and Lomond area? What could we go back and do with that? So this is where the smart village idea came out. Smart village means a number of things, a number of folk, but we were really wanting to look at how we could use the technology and how that could come back and benefit the communities. So what we actually did before COVID is we actually had an event just to try and highlight what would be possible to some of the communities and really get their ideas. We didn't want to go back and force stuff on them, what could be useful for them. So from the community was there is we had a whole list of things looking at air quality, people counting, footfall counting, it was in there, traffic management, how we could actually look at some of the visitor management that was required in their communities. So really tonight is just looking at a number of these projects, where they are just now, and where we actually want to look or take it into the future, and also hopefully the idea that might spark a few more other ideas for some of the communities that are not weren't present at that particular stage. So one of the things that would seem to be coming up quite a bit was air quality. There was probably about a dozen of the communities were looking at air quality, and I was lucky enough to speaking with Jim who was there, who, sorry, I think it's just Ian's trying to get in there. It's my phone that's kind of going there at the moment. Who actually was able to kind of coordinate a lot of the stuff with the kind of air quality kind of side, and was able to kind of coordinate that part of the kind of project. So probably at this stage is I'll maybe pass over to kind of Jim, and who can explain a wee bit more on the kind of project, and also Amy from Stirling Uni, or University of Stirling, who and their kind of part with that kind of project. So over to both of yous.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks to Anne Michelle and Forth Valley and Lomond Leader for inviting Amy and I along to talk to you tonight. So let's start off by thinking about what the main aims of the network are. So for me, and this has been discussed with the partners and with Sean, and agreed that this should be a citizen-led network of smart sensors. So we want the project to be run and managed by the communities and adapted over time to provide the information which is important to each community, which might be quite different in different places and also at different times of year due to the tourism industry, which we of course rely on heavily in the Forth Valley. The information generated should enable each community to understand what's really going on in their village or town and to plan accordingly and react to those facts. This could provide useful information when compiling place plans, which all of us have now got to do by law. I know we're busy doing that in Thornhill at the moment. And the information that we're providing from these networks should also assist with planning and development decisions as well. So, of course, the data will be going out to the communities first and foremost, but it will also be pushing back into Stirling Council and any other interested parties who can use it usefully as an informant set of data. We also intend to assist the communities with the analysis of the data because there's a lot of data from these things. And Amy will be engaging with you to determine the air quality issues that are of greatest importance within each community, and possibly what can be done to improve air quality over time as well. Why air quality? Well, Sean's already covered it, so I won't bore you with a whole bunch of statistics, but since it's being recorded, you can go back over these in due course. But air quality kills a lot of people or brings forward the deaths of many people due to the poor air quality that is around the whole of the world. But in the UK in particular, we lose 28 to 36,000 people each year early to air pollution. It affects us all, young and old, and it can have short-term and long-term cumulative effects, contributing to respiratory, cardiovascular conditions, and can also even, as been shown in recent papers, affect the development of children in the womb. So we decided that what was the most important thing that we could do in the Forth Valley? Well, if we had unlimited funding, which we didn't, we would measure everything. So what we've decided to do is focus on the things that we believe are the most important in each of the areas that we're monitoring. And in that case, most of the problem is from particulate pollution, which comes from traffic, from agricultural activity, from natural sources as well, which a lot of people forget about. It's not just anthropogenic sources that we're looking at, and also from industry. But as you'll see later, and some of you may have noticed today, a white haze in the air. Well, we'll show you what that was later today. In the larger towns and cities where we have a lot of stop-start traffic, and and especially in the summer period. So in Calendar, we decided we were going to measure not only the particulate matter pollution, but also the nitrogen dioxide and ozone. And we're using slightly different equipment there than we are in the rest of the network, but it's all comparable. And in this map, you can see there are 3 locations where we haven't yet put the equipment out simply because of operational issues, but we're hoping to complete that in the next week or so. What does the sensor hardware look like? Well, some of it is very simple. Those of you who have already hosted devices, you'll see that there are devices, very, very small devices. I'll hold them one up now just to give you an idea of the size. Tiny little device, which runs on DC power. It costs about £2 a year to run, even with the, I calculated these using the new electricity prices that we're all suffering from this month. So very, very low cost. They're designed to be reliable. They're designed to be unobstructive in that you don't need planning permission to put them up. And they cost very little to run. Another important thing is that the community themselves can actually carry out the maintenance, which is very simple and not very often required. And therefore, we can deploy these without too many problems, just about anywhere that we need to do so. And in fact, due to Amy's involvement in the project, we've now got additional funding for about 20 additional monitors of the type that you see at the top right here. And those are going to be spread out amongst the existing partner locations, and possibly 1 or 2 additional locations when we get them in the next month or 2. We've also decided to measure weather, and that will become very clear why when I show you some of the data live, especially from today when we had a pollution episode. So this is what the kit looks like when it's actually been installed. You can see some examples here in Callander, Aberfoyle, Thornhill and Fintry, just to show you a few of the ones that we've put up. And you can see in Callander, we're actually utilizing a slightly different device, which looks like Darth Vader. Very nice advanced system for measuring gases and particles. And in every other location at the moment, we're using purple air detectors, which are focused simply on the PM pollution. But weather plays an enormous part in the pollution levels that we experience. We know that in Scotland, we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of wind. We've had more than our fair share of storms this winter. And therefore, we decided to set up a network of weather sensors across the valley as well, because this will assist in our understanding of how pollution forms, moves and disperses across the area and beyond. And of course, that's important when we come to actually take action to improve air quality. We need to know what the source of that air quality is. So when I got up this morning and I got to my desk for the first time, because I'm a bit geeky that way, I always look at all the monitors across the valley, and they're usually measuring 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes as much as 10 micrograms of PM 2.5 particles. This morning, before I'd even looked out the window, I noticed that the levels were all 3 to 4 times higher than they normally are. So I then went upstairs and looked out the window, and I could see, as many of you may have done today, a kind of white haze. Looks like fog, but it's actually not fog. It's ammonium nitrate particles. And where did they come from? Well, they weren't locally emitted, because as you can see, even in Strathire and Fintry and Blair Logie, where there's not a lot of local emissions at all, then the levels are usually very low. Everywhere was reading almost the same concentration. Well, that tells us that the pollution came from elsewhere. So who can we blame? Well, it turns out that actually the whole of the UK, with a very few exceptions, maybe the southwest of Ireland, we're all experiencing very high levels of particulate pollution today. So I then went to windy.com to look to see where the wind was coming from. And it was coming from our Dutch, Belgian, French and German friends in the continent. And this quite often happens when we get southeasterly winds. We get continental air coming across the whole of the UK, which mixes with ammonia from agricultural activity and forms these ammonium nitrate particles, which absolutely drench the whole of the UK. You can see that the wind from heading the southwest of Ireland was actually coming from the Atlantic. Thus, they were having much lower levels, much more akin to what we normally see in the Forth Valley. So today was a bad pollution day, but actually very fortunate, given that I was talking to you all tonight. It gave me something interesting to show you. But in normal times, these are the kind of average concentrations that we've seen since the beginning of 2022 across the Forth Valley. And you can see here that, you know, not surprisingly, Callander, Aberfoyle are up there. with being the larger places with more traffic and more domestic heating concentrated within the area that the sensors are in. Thornhill was actually coming up pretty high as well, and also Doon, which is probably not surprising. And again, not surprising, Blairlogie, Fintry and Strathire, all a bit more remote and rural, are seeing much, much lower levels. Now, this might very well change when we get into the tourism season in the spring and summer, but for the moment, the air quality in the valley is pretty good. And as long as we stay below the 10 microgram limit as an annual average, then we meet the government's criteria for air pollution in the area. I thought just to demonstrate the worth of the weather network, I would show you the rainfall in February, which with all these storms has been quite significant. And interestingly, Fintry came out top. I expected it to be Aberfoyle, but there we go. I'm new to the area, so you have to forgive me. But this information as well we'll share with you as we go through and generate more data. I should caution everyone that we're only been running for a few months, so we've got to be a little bit cautious about reading too much into this data. And as we get a whole year of data, then I think it will be much more interesting to look at the averages over the entire year, the entire seasons, and we'll really know just how good or bad the figures really are. In Thornhill, not in the other locations, we're also trialing a new LiDAR traffic monitoring system. And this is a very small unit, about the size of the air quality unit, that sits up, looking down on the road junction. And to our great surprise in Thornhill, even the people that have been in Thornhill for many, many more years than I have been, were shocked to find that we actually have 75,000 vehicle movements through that junction in 1 month. That was about 3 times higher than the highest guess that we had at a recent meeting. So I think this is also interesting and may explain why the air quality levels in Thornhill Main Street are a little bit higher than we expected as well when we were looking at the annual averages. So eventually, if we have time tonight, we can flip back and look at live demo of the user interfaces. But what I wanted to emphasize here is that we are providing links to all of the communities to look at your data in real time on the web, and you can use those links to embed the data onto your local website. The data is yours. There's no editing or filtering of the data. Everything that this network produces is freely available to the participants. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over now to Amy, who will take over and tell you a little bit about her involvement in the project. Amy, if you let me know when you want the slides moved forward.
Brilliant, thank you, Jim. So thanks, Jim, and also thanks to the leader group for having me along tonight. I'm Amy McCarran. I'm an environmental geographer and a public health researcher based at the University of Stirling. So my research interests are in air quality, air pollution, but rather than look at this from the the top down, if you like, so think policy, think regulation, my research interests are in the bottom up things that we can do. So the things that we can do at the individual and the community level to reduce our emissions of and exposures to air pollution. These obviously complement policy, they complement regulations, but they're more often more immediate, and it means that us as individuals or us as communities have more control or more autonomy over the quality of the air that we're exposed to and the quality of the air that we breathe. So I'm here to very briefly chat to you about our upcoming project, which follows on from the work that Jim has introduced you to. It's about, our project's about getting the community involved in the co-design of air quality monitoring, and to evoke interest at the individual and the community level. So we want to get communities involved in the co-design of the placement of air quality sensors, the ones that Jim introduced you to earlier. We want to get communities involved in interpreting air quality data that we collect from these sensors. We also want to allow the community to get involved and to have a say in how air quality data is communicated. So what data is sort of how is it meaningful, how are data best communicated and best made use of. And finally, we want to sort of encourage action at the individual and at the community level. Before I get into it, I should acknowledge my funders. So I'm funded by NERC IAPTIS 2 DTP. They fund my PhD, and this project specifically is funded by the Scottish Government and CIPA. So next slide, please, Jim. Thanks. Yeah, so we're hosting a series of collaborative community-based workshops. And as I said, these are designed to get the community more involved in air quality monitoring, communication, action. And the collaborative part is really important because quite often us as researchers come to projects as outsiders. So I live in Glasgow. I'm not a massive outsider, but it's a completely different perspective. So the reason that we need the community to be involved is because you have local knowledge and you have the expertise of what goes on in your local community simply by living there, working there, shopping there, visiting there. You are the expert in the local area. And we need that knowledge to sort of shape and co-design these monitoring campaigns. So workshop 1 is about exploring the sort of the wheres of air quality, local air quality. So we want to learn where communities believe their air quality to be best and worst, and why this is. We also want to be using maps of the local area, and we'll use community members where they would like to see air quality monitors set up, and again exploring why they would like that. And ultimately this participatory mapping exercise will guide the placement of the sensors that we install in the communities. Workshop 2, following on from workshop 1, explores the sort of the whys. So feeding back the data that we collected following on from workshop 1, we'll ask the community why, based on their local knowledge and expertise. So why are we seeing the trends that we're seeing? Why are we seeing the peaks? Why are we seeing the troughs? And what are these related to? And we'll also take the opportunity in workshop 2 to explore what data are useful and how should this be presented for it to be meaningful and actually usable by the community. Following on from this, we've got workshop 3. So this is sort of at the exploring what can we do to improve air quality locally, how can we do it, and who can do what, because everybody can do something. So workshop 3 will be used to sort of a recap on workshops 1 and 2, reminding the community where the sensors have been placed, displaying the data that we have got from these sensors before asking, okay, what can be done at the individual level, what can be done at the community level, and what can be done at the regional level. So then following on from the 3 workshops, this sort of filters down, and through the knowledge sharing, through the capacity building, participants can contribute to this larger community network event. So we'll bring together communities from across Stirlingshire, not just the communities that have hosted the workshops, but across the area, to share their experiences, their learnings, to identify and share common problems, and then hopefully to share solutions to the air quality problems that we've identified as well. So we're spreading the sort of the solution finding to the regional level. Next slide, please, Jim. Thank you. So our events will be taking place in the 6 proposed locations on the screen. So that is Aberfoyle, Callander, Doon, Fintry, Thornhill and Strathire. They'll be taking place in town halls and community centres, accessible to everyone. So everyone is welcome, and you don't just need to live in these communities to come along to these events. So whether you live there, work there, shop there, if you visit the community occasionally, then you've got something that you can bring. So everybody's welcome to attend. The workshops have been designed to be interactive, family friendly, sort of a drop-in events, and we'll provide refreshments. So you can come, you can stay for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, it's up to you. And it's up to you what activities you'd like to take part in as well. Don't worry if you miss any of the events, because they're designed to be standalone events. So even if you can't make all of the events, if you can only make some, that's fine, you can still contribute, and you'll have the opportunity to leave your email address, and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on and what we've learned. As I think it just popped up there, the dates of the workshops are still to be confirmed, but keep an eye out locally. So we'll advertise the events on in local papers, social media, community notice boards. We'll sort of try and cover the main bits of communication, or you can drop me an email. So my email is at the bottom of the slide. If you give me an email, I can add you to the mailing list, and we'll keep you updated. I'm going to use my last slide, Jim, if you don't mind moving it on, please, to shamelessly promote some other work that I've got going on at the minute. So if you're interested in learning more about your personal exposure to air pollution, it might be of interest to you. So we're recruiting men who have been diagnosed with asthma to take part in our study exploring the links between asthma and air pollution. If you live in Scotland, have been diagnosed with asthma, are age 18 plus and a non-smoker, then you can take part. If you want to have a chat about it, find out more, sign up. Again, drop me an email. But that's the sort of a shameless promotional work. I hope to see some, if not all of you, at one or some of the community events we've got planned. Thank you for your time. Jim, I think I'll pass back to you now.
Yeah, nothing more to say, Amy. Thanks very much, other than thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. And to remind you that Clean Air Day nationally is on June 16 this year, and we very much hope that our network will feature in some of the activities which are being involved by Environmental Protection Scotland and other air quality groups in the country. Thanks very much, Michelle and Michelle.
Okay, I'll come in there, and Michelle, just thanks very much there for really interesting kind of talk there. Maybe if there's time at the end, we'll maybe take some questions and answers, but maybe quickly we'll move on to Alistair from North, who would explain some of the kind of car parking, the flood monitoring projects that he has been working alongside Oder and both Stirling kind of Council with in a number of areas. So if switch over to Alistair.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sean. Thanks very much, Anne Michelle, for the opportunity to present. Just share the slide. So yes, I'm going to be talking to you today about the IoT Scotland network that has been deployed across urban and rural parts of Scotland, and then specifically a couple of projects that we've been working with Sean on. Monitoring car parks, traffic footfall, and also smart flood monitoring. First of all, just a quick slide on IoT Scotland, if you're not aware of it. It was a joint project between North and Scottish Government to deploy a LoRaWAN network. LoRaWAN is a technology that allows sensors to connect and report their data back to central servers and applications. And it's very low speed technology, so you're talking about 100 kilobits per second, so it's not going to connect to the internet or transfer video. And the project completed at the end of December, where we provided coverage for 29 of the 32 local authorities in Scotland. You can see the map on the right there of the coverage. I've got a slide later on that will show you a bit more detailed coverage around about the Stirling and the Loch Lomond areas. The project was, we worked very closely with all the councils, housing associations, ScotRail, and a range of colleges and universities that allowed us to put the gateways up on their buildings. Basically, the way it works is a sensor will take its measurement, a bit like the air quality sensors mentioned earlier, and then they will transmit that using LoRaWAN to the nearest gateway, and the gateway then sends that back to a central server, where we then forward that data to the relevant application or website or dashboard that it's looking for. 462 gateways deployed, so it's the largest LoRaWAN network in the UK, and probably one of the larger ones in Europe. It's an open access network. So what that means is you can buy an IoT solution from North, but you can also get your own sensors and connect it to the network, and you just pay a small fee per sensor per year. And that price starts at something like £14 per sensor per year. We've also got a range of other partners that we're working with. So there's a wide partner ecosystem available to deploy solutions on the back of this network. LoRaWAN is just one of many. So there are other Internet of Things networks that you can use. These could be from some of the mobile operators like Vodafone. They have a solution called Narrowband IoT. O2 has a variant called LTE. What it provides is the capability to very cost effectively deploy sensors and gather in this remote data. And very importantly, if they're battery powered sensors, the sensors can last several years, which is important if you're putting them out in the wilds of Scotland, or if you're putting out hundreds or thousands of these sensors. You don't want to have to keep going back and changing the batteries. So it gives you an idea here of the map of the local coverage. So we've got great coverage around Stirling, Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. We're also have been working with Western Bartonshire and Clackmannanshire councils, and have got some good coverage there for gateways. So the gateways that we've deployed here are going to support the sensors that we've talked about earlier. The first project was aimed at working with Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, where they had a challenge where last year, or the year before actually, before the lockdown, they were putting the park rangers out at each of the car parks, and they were monitoring car park usage and then phoning that in. And what they really needed was an automated system where they could actually get sensors in place to give an indication of how busy a car park is, and then redirect tourists and other people visiting the national park to other areas that are just as beautiful to go and see, but maybe not as popular as the main car parks. They also wanted some sensors to be deployed on some of the main roads around the national park, so to gain a better understanding of how the road is used, and actually then feed that back into local planning. And then the third set of monitoring was to put footfall monitors on the West Highland Way and some other popular walking routes to gather in data of how heavily they're used. So the challenge was to provide all of the above data and gather it automatically via battery powered IoT sensors that would connect onto the IoT Scotland network. The data from those sensors would be made available in a dashboard for the council and other parties to consume, but also importantly, the data would be then available to be exported into other systems, so such as local council websites and the council GIS platform. A GIS platform is a mapping platform, so a lot of the council services are put down on the GIS mapping application, and therefore it was important that the data could be made available to that as well. So the diagram you can see on the left is basically some of the sensors that we've deployed. I think these ones are in, I'm going to get it wrong, I think it's Aberfoyle, but you can see there's two sensors either side of the road. These are radio beam sensors, so they can actually detect cars passing as well as direction on them. We also have some other sensors which are based on magnetometers, so they basically detect a lump of metal passing them, so a vehicle, again, passing left or right. So we have a range of these deployed across the various towns within the national park. What we've then done is developed a dashboard that basically gives a real-time view, so we can see on the map color-coded whether the car park is busy or free at the moment. And you can see there's a standard table there providing status updates and usage of the car park. This data is shown in this format in the dashboard, but as I said, the raw data is available for other systems to pull out and display in the relevant way. What we can see here, it also gives the statistics of what we can see here is for one of the car parks at Calendar Meadows, we can see the incoming and outgoing vehicles over a week period. And you can actually download this data into a CSV file for further processing if required. So actually using this information, they can advise people which days are busier than others and what time of the day is best to make your visit. What we also deployed was the footfall monitoring. So these are a set of these sensors based on the West Highland Way. Again, making sure that we have IoT Scotland coverage there. These sensors and the batteries in them will last several years, and we'll be recording and reporting back automatically in terms of the number of walkers moving from left to right and right to left. This is a radio beam technology that's used here. Again, dashboard development. So we've got the footfall statistics. And actually, you can see here, as expected, Saturday and Sundays are the busiest times when we've got walkers out. Interestingly, looking at some of the dashboard during some of the recent storms, there are still a lot of brave souls that are out there walking and beating the weather. This is sensors are on the path up to Connick Hill. As well as taking the footfall information, the sensors can also measure things like temperature and humidity. So again, using this, the data that's gathered here, you can see what the temperatures are falling to and obviously what they're rising to over the period that the measurements have been taken. The traffic monitoring, we're just at the point of deploying those sensors. The traffic monitors will be deployed at 7 locations across the national park. And those are solar powered radar-based sensors. They will detect how many vehicles are going left and right past the sensor, and they'll also put them into speed buckets, so we can actually detect and report on what sort of speeds people are actually traveling past these roads. And as I said, the information gathered can then be used for feeding back into the council's planning for the road network. The next project I'm going to give you a couple of slides on is flood monitoring. So there was a requirement by Stirling Council to put some sensors in and around Strathblane to measure and monitor water levels, but also rainfall. So we've actually got some sensors on a local Balagan burn to measure the water level. There's 2 types of sensors being deployed there. And we've also got 2 rain gauges that have been deployed within Strathblane. All of these sensors connect to and report back over the IoT Scotland network. There's also a requirement to put in a 4G camera. This 4G camera is solar powered, and it's actually going to be on a post next to that bridge that you can see here. And what that's allowing to do, as you can see, the water level there is very close to the bottom of the bridge. And if you get any sort of trees or other rubbish that are floating in the burn, it can quickly block up that bridge, and then it runs a risk of the water overflowing and flooding over there. So the council are putting solar powered 4G camera in place on this flooding hotspot, so that if they detect through the sensors that there is high water in place, they can quickly connect into this camera and see if there's any other issues that they need to go and deal with. All of the above data, again, is gathered automatically via the IoT sensors and fed back to the dashboard. Again, the data, although it's available and visible on the dashboard, it's also available for the council to put into their GIS mapping platform, and also for local websites to consume. So allowing people to see if there's any sort of flooding conditions occurring. The types of flood sensor that are getting deployed in place, the one on the right hand side is an ultrasonic sensor. So that basically sends a beam down that gets bounced up from the level of the water. You know how far the distance would be if there was no water in the burn, and you just do a simple subtraction to work out the depth of the water. The second one, which you can see there in the diagram, is it's yet to be installed by the council, but that's a pressure sensor. So basically the little grey box that's going to be on that brick wall is what sends the data back to the network, and down on that wooden post is a pressure sensor that's inserted into the bottom of the burn. And basically, as the water level rises, the pressure rises, and you can detect the water level from that. Again, same dashboard where you've actually got the ability to upload photos, shows where the sensor is located on the map, but also provides all the current status and charts on water level, maximum level that's been experienced. And then you can also tie in the local rainfall from the nearby rain gauge on the same page. On the rain gauges, these are very simple rain gauges. They're tipping bucket. So basically that cup gathers the water, and the spikes on it are to stop birds deciding to have a rest and nest on it. But basically every 2.5 millimeters of rain that fall into that cup goes into a bucket that tips, and then every time the switch tips, that's one count. And then every 15 minutes, the sensor that's connected to that will then send back how many buckets of water have actually tipped in that period. Again, dashboard shows the rainfall, and all of this information is available either to download on the CSV or for other applications or systems to consume. The 4G camera that we spoke about, again, it's very lightweight. 4G was very important because obviously it'd be very expensive to put any sort of connectivity to that pole and to that camera. And solar power is also very important. Again, quite often these locations, there is no power available. Now, obviously, we've sized the solar panel and the battery such that we believe it will work fine, but obviously sunshine in Scotland sometimes can be a bit of a challenge. So we will see how this goes within the sort of dark winter months. But the location that we're deploying this one on has got a clear view to the direction it needs to be done to get maximize sunlight on it. A couple of other projects that we're working that are relevant maybe for the area. As part of IoT Scotland, we've got a range of accelerator packs that we made available to councils and other stakeholders. These were free IoT solutions consisting of a number of sensors, connection to the network, and the relevant applications. And these were made available for a 12-month period. We're deploying these for Stirling Council and Clackmannanshire to monitor building health. And we're monitoring CO2 levels within the buildings. These have been put in either office buildings or schools. High levels of CO2 are an indication of bad air quality, which obviously with coronavirus gives you an indication that you need to open the windows or turn the air conditioning on. But actually within a school environment, high levels of CO2 are also not very good for pupils in terms of concentration, when they can get sore heads. So that's getting deployed within Stirling and Clackmannanshire. And then we've also got some sensors that are getting deployed to monitor road surface temperature sensing. So basically that will monitor the roads and provide data that can be fed back into the gritting operations. These are using sensors that have been developed by Census, which is a part of Glasgow University, and they're infrared battery-powered sensors. Another project we're just starting is for a 3 Lochs Forest Drive with the Forestry and Land Scotland, where we're monitoring traffic and vehicles and bikes going round the 3 Lochs Forest Drive. We'll also be monitoring toilet usage and also the gates. There are a number of gates that are locked and opened every day, and quite often these can either be forgotten to be locked or opened, or somebody can break the lock and open them. So that, again, this is an important set of information for Forestry and Land Scotland. They're looking to expand that if it's successful. And then the third one, and it's kind of an open offer to anybody on this call here, we also support any of the bidders on the CivTech challenges. We supported some companies last year with free connectivity to IoT Scotland. And again, this year we're supporting some of the companies with free connectivity to IoT Scotland. So if there are any research projects or development projects that are happening, then North will be happy to support that and provide the required connectivity. That's it from me. So if I hand back to Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Just one question that came in the chat there, at the moment, it was really just regarding the footfall sensors. It says, do they pick up, the hills? What about if there was deer, etc. It's on there, and supplementary was there about, they would also pick up night walkers even.
So they will pick up deer. I mean, basically they're an infrared beam. Also, if there's two people walking abreast, they're only going to count that as one. But they are operational 24/7, so you will actually see, and we have seen that there are quite a few people that like to go out walking very early in the morning.
Okay, right, thanks. And I think your slides there seamlessly kind of followed on to the last kind of presentation of this evening from Ian. I think Ian actually was one of the people that's involved in the CivTech kind of challenge, and really interested to find it's great we're going to get in all this kind of data from a variety of sources, but then how can we actually do stuff with it? How can we make it something that's kind of meaningful and actually help the kind of the visitor kind of management as well as the locals in the area. So maybe if I pass over now to Ian, hopefully our connectivity issues are sorted. That looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thanks, Ian.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sean, and everyone. Lovely to be here today. Let me just make this. Can everyone see my presentation? Is that working for everyone? Amazing. So I'm Ian McNeil. I'm the Managing Director of Whereverly. We essentially create tourism technology products. So we work for a variety of tourism businesses. We work for some councils. We work for people at the North Coast 500. We were a successful CivTech, I think you call us a challengee. So we basically met a challenge in CivTech to solve a problem. And the problem was over tourism. And we had come across that problem a lot. We could see it happening on, things like the North Coast 500. We could tell when it was going to be a problem looking at our apps and the data we could see. And it was amazing to see a challenge that actually wanted to actively use data sources we hadn't really used before, like IoT sensor data, and actually do something about over tourism. So we were delighted to be successful. So I'll take you more about what our sort of solution has been, what we did for the MVP, and what we're going to move on to. And Alistair, thank you very much for letting us use your LoRaWAN gateway. So that was really handy to have that in the kind of remote places that we were putting sensors down. As we all know, Scotland's amazing. It's got some of the most beautiful scenery and landscape in the world. More and more people are staying at home. More and more of us are discovering all the beautiful things around us. It's creating a lot more visitors to our rural areas. And this year looks like another big year. And even before, the lockdowns, there was at times and places there was over tourism. And it's great getting into the landscape, but when you see, there's single track roads blocked off, cars parking on the verges, bins overflowing, it kind of ruins it. We've got amazing people in our ranger services. I've met lots of them. They're incredibly dedicated people protecting your natural environments for the future. They run off their feet trying to deal with issues rather than, positively interacting with the visitors the way they would like to. This is one of the biggest problems, I think, facing people. It happens in Scotland, it happens down in Wales, it happens in England. So it's a really great to have the opportunity to try to address it. one of the tools that one of the kind of centre tools we've used is, as Alistair's talked about, LoRaWAN is a network in its ascendancy. You know, the sensors getting cheaper. You know, the data that can be collected and passed from areas that don't have connectivity is amazing now. It really is a revolution, like a slow revolution that's happening in terms of information. This has allowed, you know, it allows people to see how busy places are. You know, it allows great volumes of data to be collected. And as we know, big data needs and algorithms need lots of data to actually start predicting and calling it correct for the future busyness. So we decided to sort of center, you know, our kind of solution on big data, and also to get rangers to collect information as well. So trying to get a base data schema so rangers can collect information that can be brought into a central point. What we would like to, well, what we're working towards doing is taking all this data from the sensors and actually making it's useful. You know, it's useful to tell people, you know, how busy a place is, but trying to make it really useful so people can use it when they're planning a trip. So if they're planning to visit in 3 months' time, we can tell them, you know, how busy it's going to be or how busy it's likely to be. We can recommend them to move around, you know, to a potentially another great place that's nearby. We did some focus group work that I thought was amazing with people in the camping community, the camper van community. And what transpired was these people we were speaking to were super experts. They knew Loch Lomond. It's an hour and a half away from where they were living, and they would go there for like 20 odd years. They've been kind of going. But when we showed them a map with information on it, it changed where they were thinking about camping, because they didn't realize all the different places they could camp. And that made us think that if we can get people consuming information, you know, we could help change some of the habits that people maybe follow going to the same places. And if we can get them to break these habits, maybe we can get the tourists to spread around and take away the pressures from the place that is really under pressure. I'm just going to, hopefully you can see this. This is a map that we created during the MVP. So you'll hopefully see, and I think Alistair's footfall sensors should be pulsing. Do you see the 3 green boots pulsing? And we'll give you access to the map. So this is a consumer-facing, sort of public-facing map that is starting to take some of that real-time data from the hubs across Loch Lomond and from, you know, the walking trails. What we want to do is to make it a product that people will want to use, you know. So from our other work, we know that people love to know where, you know, where nature is. So we've put in like data for where the sightings are. They want to know where the walks are. They want to know, you know, where can I camp? How can I camp? You know, where are the toilets? You know, that can be quite a really crucial one to know. You know, where are all the useful things? You know, we're going to reach out to different people in communities like the motorhome community. What information do you need? You know, what information are you not getting, or you having to look at like 5 sources to find it, and bringing it into the map to make it really useful. People in the walking community, what information do you need? You know, so we will build quite a rich, it's almost like an outdoors map, a rich outdoor maps for people to get the most of it. And it's not just for, we were thinking it might just be for newcomers to the outdoors, but just, you know, talking to the experienced motorhomers, there's information this map can give them that they were shown this a few weeks ago, and they wanted to get like open access to it so they could actually use it for their planning. And it's, you know, it's like maybe 10% finished just now, or a sort of beta level. So in this map, I'll get a link to you all so you can actually download this map, and you'll see it sort of developing over the next few months. So we've put some of the walks in, because that's another amazing thing to do when you're outdoors. I'll move on to the next slide. So One of the things we did during CivTech as well was when we were listening to the rangers, there was some places they were going up in Perthshire, so it was Loch Lomond and it was also Perth and Kinross as well. And a wee place up in Perth and Kinross was quite plagued by having antisocial behaviour, but it's really miles away for the rangers to go. So what they asked for was, is there any way that we could, you know when to visit rather than scheduling a visit that takes like an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back to check out. So one of the centres working with Sensational Systems, an IoT company, we put in sensors that basically collect not personally identifiable information, just kind of noise levels and motion events. So if that's going quite heavily, the rangers know that, you know what, it's worth scheduling a visit. So there's lots of little problems that I think, data and IoT and the LoRaWAN network can help address. The next steps, before I have a wee closer look at the map, are we're going to deploy some additional sensors. I know there's a lot of sensors that the team at Stirling want to bring the data into, and I think that would be amazing because it will kind of bring to life the different hubs, and it will give us a better chance to kind of develop the algorithms. We want to collect data so we can develop a predictive algorithm to see how busy a place will be and make recommendations. We're going to trial using the data to change people's actual behaviour through a map, the variable messaging, and through probably a Twitter bot that will basically say when a place is busy, and some of the bigger channels like Loch Lomond can pick it up. We will connect in the ranger recorded data and the sensor data into that big pool of data that's getting collected in Stirling. I reckon it'll be 2023 before we can kind of roll it out at scale across the park. And at that point, we would hope it would help, visit planning, before you come, giving you the information to make the good decisions and go to the places that are not too crowded. All the way through to when you're in location. So we can, if we've got an app, we can give you notifications if your destination is going to be too busy and give you a recommendation of somewhere nice. So we'll work with the rangers to work out if that place is busy, where else is the next best place to go to. So we help distribute people around. This is just a wee example of the map, but I think with everything, it's good playing with it yourself, just having a wee go. So we've got a link to the beta version of the map that we created during the CivTech Accelerator. This is taking data from across north from the walking sensors that were mentioned earlier. So we're just taking this data and trying to make it as useful as possible. So bringing it into a visitor focused app. So rather than a kind of internal, people working the council focused map, a more visitor focused one. So it was brilliant to get the pins that are changing colors with how busy it's going. It's amazing to see the data and sort of develop. Here you can see that, what Alistair was saying about, they're going up the way, they're going down the way. It seems that more people go up than come down, but I hope they come down at some point, but not quite sure of exact behaviours. But I think that's the learning of it all. We'll all learn and see what's going on. Here is a Balmaha. So Balmaha is like multiple sensors to get a feel of how busy the hub is. So I think some new sensors were put down, some existing sensors I believe are there as well. So you can see at Balmaha, so there's, like the overall busyness, which is something you need to calibrate this overall because you're taking multiple measures to work out. So you need somebody on the ground almost to say, hey, it's busy, and it is, we're saying it's busy and it is busy, so there'll be calibrations. Here's the main door, like open, so you can see when it's getting busy and all the doors are opening, the toilets, sort of usage, the museum visits, the disabled spaces. We thought that's a great thing to do to collect that so we could let people know, that these important spaces and how they're available. Even the baby change centre, so I'm not sure how some of these measures we might not maybe carry on when it goes proper public. We also got we want it to be like, the ultimate, thing that gives you information for a great outdoor trip. So we're getting all the camping sites, all the parking. We've got the routes coming through. I'd love to go quite granular, you know, where can I burn, where can I have, not burn it, can't burn anything, but, you know, where are the fire pits? You know, where are the things, you know, that I need to know, like at quite a really granular level. And I think we can actually do this, you know, we can get to that level. So there could be where, you know, where can I have my barbecue? You know, and you could see all the fire pit spots rather than people just randomly doing it, but they can, you know, find a wee space to do it. So I think that, you know, I think there's a lot of work we'll do with the rangers and the groups to sort of develop and get the detail on this. What I loved was there was even information about beaver sightings and you know, where the squirrels are, and the pine marks seem to go where the squirrels go, it seemed to be. So this information is amazing. Like if I was choosing where to camp, if I could camp where I could maybe see a squirrel or something, that's amazing, you know. So we're putting the sort of rich data in from the sightings into the map as well to make it a really quite unique experience. I think routes we've seen from a lot of the work we do in places are a real driver. It helps you see unique things. So we'll be doing some work on routes, and this is just a little example of what we're doing in Scotland Starts here in the south of Scotland. So we got a lot of feedback from users saying that we want to know, you know, not just the route in a nice wee line. I want to know, you know, where's the food and drink, you know, where's the height and stuff, you know, is it up and down? I can maybe do one big hill and that's okay, but my knee might hurt if I've got 3 big hills to go over. So we started to pull more data back from routes, and this is something that we'll bring into the work that we do with the national park. Yeah, and we'll bring it into 3D because it's good to see, you know, you can see the easy bits and see the wee hard bits, but seeing it in 3D is a really nice way of just getting a really good informative feel of it. This is all available, pardon me, either through the little QR code or just beta.exploreoutdoors.scot. And I think it's fine that, you know, that everyone can have a wee look. And it's a work in progress. It's a beta map. It's not really for public consumption as such, but I think it'd be fine if you all had a look and a go, and you'll hopefully see it over the next, you know, few months getting richer and richer. Any feedback you've got, then you've got my details. Give me a shout if there's anything you think's really important or something I should consider or we should consider as a team. And I think we'll be more than happy to have your feedback. That's all from me. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Stop sharing.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. That was, it's, you know, to me, it's going to be, you know, a really exciting and could be kind of a game changer. One question that did come in, because a number of kind of communities is on here, and they're just wondering how can the communities, and you know, they probably know best, you know, on some of the particular areas and know what they are looking for. How can they kind of interact with you, or to get their kind of local information onto the apps?
I think the first point would be to look at look at the map as it stands, and I think that would be good. Then start giving feedback on that, because you know we're at such a formative time. You know, if people had really good ideas, we can take these ideas in. We have our first kind of proper, you know, like don't we call it, not board meeting, stakeholder group meeting. So at the end of this month with us, Stirling Council, Loch Lomond National Park, and the kind of key partners, there's a big section on community involvement, and I think there's people who are quite experienced at community involvement that'll be involved in that. So I think there'll be stuff, Sean, coming from that we can share out, and maybe, you know, paths. I just like the feedback. The feedback would be great for us, and so because we're happy to get direct feedback anytime. But I think there might be some proper paths from that big meeting we've got at the end of the month, Sean.
Okay, fine. Right. Again, saying thanks very much for that. At the moment, you know, I know it just went over the kind of 7 o'clock, but I'm just wondering if there's any question and answers. Anne Michelle, I know you've.
I've always got lots of questions.
Forward. Yes.
If people have got questions, if you want to, there is a hands up sign, or if you put in the chat, and I'll maybe make the most of whilst I've got the floor, just to ask. Well, actually, it's a similar one to Ian just then. About Ian, is it interesting for you just now for communities to tell you what kind of information they think should be on that visitor management map?
And Michelle, it would be amazing. Yeah, I think that's really important. So, you know, we're reaching out to some of the user groups, you know, the big user groups we can see of the park, but to have the information that community members are asked, or they'll know, like they'll intuitively know a lot of stuff that would be really useful.
Okay.
So that would be really good.
Yeah, okay, we can maybe facilitate some of that. And I've also got a question for Alistair and Jim, because I'm not quite sure which, I think it's to both of you, because I was thinking about the air pollution, but monitoring. We've, for example, as have a few other public funders, have been funding some climate projects, and I'm climate and carbon in particular. Is carbon something that you know would be easily captured by sensors? You know, is it realistic that we could be funding projects and then monitoring the amount of carbon that's in the atmosphere through your sensors?
Yeah, I can take that one, Anne Michelle. You've touched on a subject that's very close to my heart, because I spent 30 years commercially monitoring air quality all over the country. And what the government does is it measures criteria pollutants like oxides of nitrogen and ozone and sulfur dioxide and particulate matter. But it only reports the observed concentrations in the air. If we were to measure CO2 at the same time as we measure those criteria pollutants, because most of the pollutants, with the exception of ozone, come from combustion, then we know that every time you combust a carbon fuel, you create CO2. So by measuring the ratio of CO2 to the other pollutants, you can calculate how dirty or clean the combustion is. In other words, the emissions index of a particular fuel. And that applies to a particular vehicle or a particular industry or a particular home heating system. And I've been trying since I officially retired 2 years ago to lobby government to do more of this. And I've now got the support of Professor Roderick Jones from Cambridge University Atmospheric Science Department, who used to be at the Met Office. I'm starting to get support now from Scottish Government. The air quality officials at Scottish Government funded such a project at COP26 in Glasgow, which is still running, and it will run to about May this year, that I'm involved in. So what I'd love to do is to enhance the Stirling network to do this kind of stuff, because not only does it tell us more about where the air pollution is coming from locally and how the sources are impacting air pollution, but you're right, by measuring carbon dioxide, we can also get a fairly good measurement of how much carbon is being combusted. And also we can, unfortunately, the sensors are not sensitive enough at the moment to look at the sequestration of carbon by trees and peat bogs and whatever. They're not accurate enough. But potentially, as the technology develops, we might even be able to do that kind of stuff as well. But we can certainly look at the sources of carbon, and the best way to do that is carbon dioxide. Sorry, a very long answer to a very short question.
Really interesting.
It's complex.
Kate, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I wanted to say to everyone that's done their bits tonight, it's been so interesting. I'm really a bit of a Luddite with all of these things, but it's kind of the possibilities of what can be done with it is absolutely incredible. I wanted to say to Amy to get in touch with me about doing the thing in Aberfoyle, obviously, and I'll promote it through all the contacts out here. But I suppose my question is for Ian about whether he's doing any focus group work with visitors and potentially with residents to say, you know, I was wondering about that. Thanks.
Yeah, we will be. So we did some, I think they're called structured interviews. So it wasn't quite a focus group. So we did structured interviews with members of the camper van community before our demo day at CivTech. Now, one of my colleagues will be setting up proper focus groups with the different kind of key user groups of the park. And I think it would be great for, I'll need to speak to her because on these things I kind of defer to her about the best ways to, you know, to engage with local communities to work out. I'm quite ashamed, I think shared and people can feedback is kind of like our method, but I'm sure she's got maybe some better ideas about how we could do that effectively. So we will be running the focus groups with the EU groups, and we can have a good think about how we can involve the communities as well. But, okay.
I'm just thinking there, Anne-Michelle, it might be a good opportunity for your kind of forum. This kind of forum could be some kind of coordinating kind of a body for that.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking actually about, you know, sharing contacts with each other, because obviously we have to be a bit careful data protection. Can I ask if you're happy for your email address to be shared with others in this group for these various different group, you know, other events? Could you put your email address into the chat? And obviously, if you don't want your email address to be shared, don't put your email address in, just as a way of giving consent, just for the purpose of this, you know, the continuation of some of this research and discussions. That would be really helpful. That would be good. There was actually another question, I think, in the chat, which has already flicked past, but I think it was to do with for Ian actually about the including charge points for e-bikes and electric cars, whether that's something you already are looking at.
Yeah, we that's a brilliant, it's not in the map just now, and that's a really good spot, and it's something that we will definitely have. And so I think is it ChargePoint Scotland, we've got an API feed, so it's quite good. So we basically use that to update, but it's not been deployed in this map. So, and I think it's a really good, you know, and I hadn't thought of bike stations, so I'm not sure about the data from ChargePoint Scotland. I know it's for the cars, I'm not sure about the bikes, so that's a really good point. And I think some of the ones we've seen from when we're doing work down in south of Scotland, they've got like bike repair points. They're kind of like poles where you can fix bits of your bike. They're really useful.
Yeah.
And if you've got them too, that's, you know, I know there'll be things I don't know from the biking community, but I think these are some of the things we would love to have it in. So, you know, if you've got your app in your hand.
I can help you with that actually, Ian, because we've got a cyclotourism project. So we have that information. And in fact, I think they're in the process of producing a map just now with all the these points of, you know, the cycle repair points and the bike charging.
That would be incredibly useful data for people. So you would love to have, if that's in existence, that would be really, really helpful. So, brilliant. Thank you, Michelle.
There you go. Sorry, James, you put your hand up as well.
Yeah, real quick one. I mean, I think it strikes me that with the 3 projects that we've heard about tonight, or 4 actually, because Alistair had 2, is that the real value lies in the combination of data, these data sets from the various different projects. And I would really like to open an invitation for Alistair and Ian to see how our network can fit in to some of the information that you're providing and some of the visuals that you're creating, Ian, as well, in particular. I mean, it strikes me that if we can determine how many charge points are being used, we'll be able to look at how the electric car fleet, how the fleet is changing towards electric over time. That will have an impact on air quality, just as an example. Again, weather data having an impact on flood levels. If we have hyperlocal weather information that we can share with Alistair, that's also going to feed into the flood network. Everything's connected, as in life. I think the challenge there for Anne-Michelle and Sean is for FVL to act as the conduit for joining all these things up, if I can challenge you.
So you are, Sean.
It's fine. No, I think the one point there, and again, I know what kind of time going on and a couple of folk might be starting dropping off. Again, in your communities, anyone that's in there, if there's any ideas, please get back in touch. with what you've seen tonight, or maybe it's sparked some kind of idea, and we can see what could be get done, either from Alistair, Ian, or there's a variety of other kind of companies that we're working with as well. One other thing, one question maybe for Alistair was, I know there's a lot of kind of community kind of activists on there. They're being asked now to do like place plans where they need a lot of this kind of data. Is there a way that they can use this data and get that, so they can produce their kind of local development plans?
So first of all, obviously, your sharing of this data is key, because as Jim says, all this data should be fed in and made accessible. Obviously, Sean, we're working with the council to kind of make that data available, so you're pulling it into your GIS platforms. So, however you want us to make that data available, at the end of the day, it's the council in these instances, or Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, that are the owner or the data controller of this data. So it is available to be consumed in whatever way you want. It's not North's data, and therefore it does make sense to make it accessible and shared across all the various platforms and applications and user groups.
No.
I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, okay, that was, yes, no. I thought that was answered, but I just wanted you to.
Well, saying that, Sean, I think from the discussions you've been having with the council on the GIS side of things, they're very keen to make this data available and open to everybody. And I suppose maybe the council would be the first point of call to get that data for your place plans or other sort of planning pieces of work anyone might be doing. Okay, that's it. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. Obviously, do feel free to drop us any questions. We will obviously forward them to, or now you've got actually everybody's email address, but we'll circulate hopefully with the permission of the presenters, everybody's presentation. If that's possible, you could email them to us. Obviously, we'll have the recording as well. And if you have any other questions, just get in touch. And all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to those amazing presentations. I mean, a lot of food for thought, I think, for all of us. I don't even want to start talking or thinking about the next topic we'll be covering, but we will have another shared learning event next month. And I think the consensus, the topic will be on community asset transfer. So if that also is of interest, tune in and we'll let you know of the dates of the next learning session or shared learning session that we run. And I'll let you get on tonight with the rest of your evening. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.